Now on this page, I want to show you how you can make a slide look slightly more interesting than your typical slide. So a typical slide is what we saw in the previous section, right? Your data on the left-hand side, takeaways on the right-hand side, and then sources at the bottom. So sometimes, depending on what content you're presenting, there are opportunities to switch things up. So this is one such example where, instead of showing some data first and then what you think about it, we actually want to present things in a different sequence, right? So on this page, the sequence that we're following is, hey, let's talk about some suggestions that we have on the left-hand side. These are our key program initiatives that we recommend to the client. And then let's talk about the expected impact, expected profit and loss uplift, so increased profitability for the client. And this will be our projections on the right-hand side. So the sequence is slightly different. We start with some initiatives on the left and then some data on the right. So that's the first way that we can switch things up, which is playing around with what's on the left-hand side and what's on the right-hand side. And stepping back a little bit from this, in general, the way that we can think about slides is as sections within a canvas. So the most obvious way to split it is left-hand side and right-hand side. And here in this case, you can see we're following the same principles, just populating them with slightly different content. Now, if you want to switch things up, there are different ways to do it, right? You can squish the left-hand side, make it 1/3, squish the right-hand side, make it 1/3. So kind of like moving the dividing line in between the two parts back and forth, depending on how much data you have on each side of the page. That's one way to make it a bit different. The other way to make it a bit different is to separate the slide horizontally. So this doesn't always work. It depends on what you're trying to show. But in this case, maybe you could have something like different icons at the top of the page, and then one long arrow to kind of take the audience down to the key takeaways at the bottom of the page. So that's splitting it from top to bottom instead of left to right. So this whole thing falls under one point, which is play around with the ratio of the slides and what type of content you put in each section within the slide. The other thing that I'm going to call out on this page is the use of icons. So this is very popular as a way to bring your slides to life. We want to use icons whenever there are interesting or important things that we want to call out. And these shouldn't be like any sort of content, right? These should be like key ideas or things that recur again and again, or things that you want the audience to remember. So in this case, we've called out the 4 key program initiatives using the 4 icons. And icons are pretty easy to find. You just have to like search for them on Google Images and then do some like processing to kind of like make them consistently formatted in the same color, etc. So the idea is to kind of bring imagery into the points where you think are worth more attention. So that's icons. And then the last thing that I want to call out is the highlights. So what I mean by highlights is when you have a chart and sometimes you want to call attention to certain parts of the chart, then you might box up something like what we have here, like a red dotted box. You might kind of put like we call it like a call out, which is basically you kind of label that part of the chart and give a slight commentary on like, hey, look at this, the gap is 26% driven by blah, blah, blah. So these are call outs, and these are things that we can include into a data chart in order to draw the audience's attention to one specific part of the chart.